call this meeting to order, and we will commence with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. See here. To the Wednesday, September 4th, 2019 meeting. We'll go ahead and go with the roll call, please.
Rick Boggs. Justin Everson.
Yes.
Robert Begarow.
Yes.
Darren McGowan.
Yep.
Randall Ripley. Ann Rogers.
Yes.
Jerry Truax.
Here. All right, moving into old business, and we have one that's being remained tabled. We have one transportation corridor that's been withdrawn, so we'll go over that a little bit later, and we will go ahead and start into C, which is application ZON-19-003, and we need a motion to remove that from the table.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
And seconded. Any discussions on that? Have a roll call on that, please.
Mr. McGowan.
Yes.
Mr. Everson.
Yes.
Mr. Truax.
Yes.
Mr. Begarow.
Yes.
Ms. Rogers.
Yes.
Okay. Who's here for Grand Communities that wants to speak? Okay.
Do you want to report first?
What's that?
Did you
Oh, I'm
want-
sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, let's go ahead and start with the report. Jack, please go ahead.
Yeah, so like you said, this is ZON-19-003. The applicant here is Grand Communities LLC. The location of this is the unimproved property at 6031 Summit Road Southwest. Current acreage is 84.18. Currently zoned R-87 medium low density residential. And the applicant is requesting approval for preliminary plan for a 211 lot planned development district, which is named Sage Plunge. So if you look here is the area map of the parcel is outlined in yellow here. You've got Cleveland Road southwest to the south and Summit to the west here.
I can't see that.
So we've already heard this application before, so I'll just touch on a little bit of the bigger parts of the summary. There's two frontages, 1,200 feet on Summit Road southwest, approximately 950 feet on Cleveland Road. The existing tree lines to the north and south. Along the property lines where the parcel borders the existing residential properties, and 880-foot tree line on the northeast corner. Some existing tree stands. It's currently zoned R87. If you look here, these are the close-in view of the existing conditions. So a little bit of zoning history. This property's been considered for development to a residential subdivision 3 times previously. Once in 2001, 2005, and 2007. All of these proposed rezonings were not accepted by City Council. They started at 205 in 2001 with a density of 2.43 and eventually down to 120 units with a density of 1.42 in 2007. So the proposal for this is to develop the property into a 211 lot planned residential development with 10 acres of the frontage on Cleveland Road. It is to be dedicated to the Licking Heights School District. Here's the overall plan layout.
Where's me?
So they're at a density of 2.51 units per acre, with 35.38 of that being dedicated to the residential lots, 28.60 open space acreage. Minimum lot sizes are 52 feet in width. Minimum lot size is approximately 6,240 square feet, or approximately 0.14 acres. The minimum setbacks are going to be 25 feet from the front, 5 feet from the side, with 10-foot minimum between the structures, and 20 feet from the rear. So here's the typical lot layout that was given on the preliminary plan. Access to be handled by one boulevard style entrance on the Sage Point Avenue from Summit Road southwest, directly opposite of Windward Drive Boulevard, to run from Summit Road southwest to the intersection of Windward Drive. Here is a close-up view of the boulevard entrance. They're going to have one emergency access drive from Sage Point Avenue up to the 10-acre dedication to Licking Heights, and 2 stub streets, one to the north and one to the south. Here's a view of the emergency access drive. Here's the overall layout showing the different access points to one drive onto Summit Road, 2 stubs to the north and south, and the emergency access drive here. They've proposed 1 subdivision identification sign. It's a hanging sign suspended from a wood pergola with additional landscaping in the median. Here is the design for the sign that was supplied with it. Landscaping, so street trees are proposed at every 50 foot, every 50 feet. 7 different species, existing trees to be preserved, excepting dead and diseased trees and where development will be occurring. They are proposing to remove 78 existing trees and replace it with 280. Some of these are in reserves A and B, plus 1 tree in the front yard of each lot, and a 6 to 7 foot high mounding between the detention basins and the home sites in reserves A and B. A 4 foot wide gravel path in reserve B with a exposed top lodge, and 3 4-foot wide gravel paths in reserve E. So here is a concept plan showing the proposed landscaping. This is all the review from the previous hearing, so I won't touch on this, but it's here if we need it. And as for today's hearing, we do have the following comments to offer. So planning and zoning staff reviewed the application. We'll mention that it was tabled at the last hearing on March 6th. Revised plans were submitted for today's hearing. Staff compiled a list of all comments, which is attached to your staff report there. So we'll just touch on kind of the major ones. 5 foot easements are required on the side yards, and 10 foot easements are required in the rear. The 25 foot tree preservation zone, the language states that trees may be removed to install utilities, however no provisions for replacement were included. The city would prefer these areas to be placed into reserves and move off the lots. The proposed density is still above the maximum pursuant to section 1255.10A1. The maximum is 2.17 units per acre and 183 units, and they are proposed at 2.51 units per acre and 211 units. So section 1255.10B1 states the minimum open space required is 35%. The applicant has proposed 34.28. The applicant stated that by including the 10 acres to be dedicated to the school, the total open space is 45.86%. However, pursuant to section 1255.10B2, only areas retained as common and public open space for parks, recreation, and related uses. Current discussion was for a bus garage, which would not meet this distinction. The emergency access, a typical section for the emergency access was provided. However, the plans still state that the emergency access will be developed by the school district at such time when development occurs on that parcel. The city and the fire district will require that a full emergency access to Cleveland Road Southwest be constructed when phase 4 is under construction, and the emergency access shall meet the requirements of the fire district. We did have some questions about the mail delivery. So cluster box units are now required of all new residential developments per the USPS. The applicant did state in the development text that CBUs shall be located inside the public right-of-way unless otherwise required by the USPS. We would like to see the locations of these indicated on the plans. And then during review of these, the previous plans from March 6th, staff found that several additional divergences were required. In the recent submission, the applicant included responses to staff comments. The applicant stated divergence requested, however, they did not include all the required divergences in the development text. Several divergences were missing. So here are the divergences that the applicant has requested. The first one being from section 1117 table 1 to allow for the construction of 3 eyebrow streets that do not meet the minimum street centerline radius of 150 feet. The second from the same section on 1117 table 1 to allow for the construction of a cul-de-sac that exceeds the maximum permitted length of 500 feet. Lemongrass Court is approximately 830 feet. The third from section 1283.05A to allow for the installation of street trees at 50-foot intervals as opposed to 30 foot as required by code. And the fourth from section 1283.09 part C, which requires a 60-foot width landscape buffer perpendicular to the right-of-way to be landscaped to the L5 standard. They're requesting a divergence to place the L5 landscaping behind the front stormwater facilities, which is approximately 125 feet from the right-of-way. And the fifth one from section 1295.09 part B8 to allow for a subdivision entry sign to exceed the maximum height of 6 foot. The applicants proposed it at 7.5 and to be of the hanging type when code states that a monument style sign is required. So the applicant also included language in this to exceed the maximum permitted sign square footage of 32 square feet. However, the way the code does it is that it's only based on one sign face. So the applicant did state that one of the sign faces is only 19 square feet, so they're actually below the maximum, and the last part of that divergence is not required. So the additional divergence that the applicant still requires are the first one from section 1255.10 G2 to allow for less than 16 feet between structures. The second one from section 1255.10A1 to allow for a density that exceeds the gross density as prescribed by the base zoning classification. The third from section 1255.10B1 to allow for more than 10% of the open space to be comprised of acreage designed for use by stormwater facilities. They're currently at 14.4%. And the fourth one from section 1255B1 also to allow for less than 35% of the open space required. So as part of our review, we routed these plans to all the applicable agencies and departments in the city. The city engineer has the following comments to offer. The first one being, as per previous comments, the majority of our comments will come as we review final construction plans. General comments will be presented for the current submittal. They said previous communications regarding the stormwater, primary concerns with drainage problems on abutting properties, and the traffic impact study. Both of these issues will be better finalized at the time of construction plans. But they did want to note that the emergency secondary access is now shown on the plans connecting to the school on property. They believe this is what the city wanted and required, but would like to ensure that the city is satisfied with what's shown. Third being, please note that the divergences have been requested on these plans based on previous reviews. The city will need to ensure that these are evaluated and considered moving forward. 4, the stormwater management report indicates a 1-year critical storm. This is unusual for a subdivision of this nature. We will want to evaluate this more deeply when the final plans and report are submitted. This should not impact the current submittal, however. And 5, it appears the location of these sanitary sewer lines as shown will work with the adequate spacing from the roads and building lines. This will continue to be evaluated with the final plans. The Public Service Director referenced some of his original comments, number 1 being the eyebrows are not per code and are not preferred. 2 being the extension street to the north is still not needed. 3, the storm sewer adjustments have not been made the storm sewer adjustments have been made, and any further consideration will be addressed during engineering plan review. 4, the 33-foot minimum pavement width shall be required. And 5, the emergency access drive across parcel to the south is called out as future emergency access drive extension. To be clear, this needs to be called out and built as an emergency access to fire department standards. In the future, when the parcel develops, it will be required to be built to match the 24-foot back-to-back section that is on the Sage Point property. Please revise the note such that this is clear. Southwest Licking Sewer Community Sewer and Water District offered this on the water. A 12-inch water main would be required to be constructed on Sage Point Avenue from Summit Road and connect to the district-owned elevated water storage on Cream Road. And for the sanitary, any development that includes the installation of a pump station to be maintained by the district shall provide a written analysis of options that were evaluated in an attempt to eliminate the need for the station. And also that the sanitary sewer easements shall be a minimum of 20 feet in width. The fire district had the following comments. Number 1 being correction for our original comment. Number 2, please refer to the fire district regulations section K, not L, for the fire apparatus access roads. 2 being the fire apparatus access roads shall be maintained and marked per the fire district regulations. 3, per the fire district regulations, all cul-de-sacs shall have a minimum width of 96 feet of unobstructed paved drivable surface with signs stating no parking. 4, the emergency access road shall be constructed prior to the start of phase 4. 5, the fire district requires a permit application to be filled out and the plan review fee to be paid in full prior to the start of construction. And 6, they also attached a copy of the district regulations and permit, which is included in your staff report. So as far as surrounding properties, to the north we have it zoned rural residential. Current use is currently vacant farmland. To the east we have it zoned manufactured home residential and medium low density residential. It's currently the Summit Ridge Estates mobile home park and single family homes. To the south, it's zoned medium low density residential and light manufacturing. Those are currently single family homes and the Ohio Steel business and other miscellaneous commercial uses. To the west is zoned planned development district and medium density residential. Those are currently the Glenbrook subdivision and several single family homes. So here's a graphic look at the zoning of the surrounding properties. Rural residential to the north, manufactured housing to the east with some single family. To the south we have it zoned light manufacturing and R87, and to the west is R20 and planned development district. Excuse me. So as part of our review, we'd like to offer the following supplementary modifications. First one being, the applicant shall address all comments from planning and zoning staff, city engineer, public service director, and the West Licking Joint Fire District. Two being, the planning and zoning commission shall approve the following divergences. A, section 1117, table 1, to allow for the construction of 3 eyebrow streets that does not meet the minimum street center line radius of 150 feet. B, section 1117, table 1, to allow for the construction of a cul-de-sac that exceeds the maximum cul-de-sac length of 500 feet. C, section 1283.05A, to allow for the installation of street trees at 50-foot intervals as opposed to 30-foot. D, section 1283.07 part C, requires a 60-foot buffer perpendicular to the right-of-way from the landscape to the L5 standard. The applicant's requesting a divergence to place the L5 landscaping behind the front stormwater facilities, approximately 125 feet from the right-of-way. E, section 1295.09B8, to allow for a subdivision entry sign to exceed the maximum height of 6 feet and to be of the hanging type. F, from section 1255.10G2, to allow for less than 16 feet behind structures. G, from section 1255.10A1, to allow for density that exceeds the gross density as prescribed by the base zoning classification. H, from section 1255.10B1, to allow for more than 10% of the open space to be comprised of acreage designed for use by stormwater facilities. And I, from section 1255.10B1, to allow for less than the 35% open space required. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for staff? Go ahead.
The 10 acres that's being given to Licking Heights School District. So that's 10 acres that's being given to the school district.
That's correct.
That, okay, right now, taxpayers don't pay a penny for that because it's privately owned. So now the school's going to accept 10 acres that now we're going to have to maintain and develop or whatever. So it's kind of like, it's a gift, but do the people want that gift? I mean, every time the school needs something or wants something, there's a levy. So now they're gonna get their hands on 10 acres of land that's gonna now come out of whatever budget that we pay into. And then I think you're talking about wanting to do like a bus garage or something like that. But isn't that something that should be kind of a vote separate? I mean, this is a development plan for a housing complex, but now the city's picking up 10 acres of land and 10 acres of responsibility to maintain.
The school district would accept the land. I don't believe, and I don't know the intricacies of it, but I believe that it is a gift, that there's no cost in terms of them purchasing it. But from a tax standpoint, I can't speak to that, but and from their board, I don't know if it went through their school board to accept it or if it was at the discretion of the superintendent. From the city's standpoint, it would not be the city's responsibility, only the school district's responsibility for development. The school district has indicated in our discussions, but there's nothing included in the development plan or in Dr. Wagner's letter that indicates it will for sure be a bus garage, but that's what they indicated it would be.
Right, but it's going to be sitting there and they're going to have it. So then 5-6 years down the road, they're coming up with another levy. I mean, I know it has nothing to do with that complex and is calling attention to the fact that there is no free gift. You know, of 10 acre land, there is gonna be consequences on the people who live in that area. And that's, you know, not so much of a problem with the development, but giving the school district that, I think, is a concern. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for staff at this moment?
I
Yeah.
do, just a couple. On the Joint Fire District in their letter said that phase 3 was when they would want the emergency access road constructed, but everywhere else it's saying phase 4. So I was wondering if you could clarify, did I miss something somewhere? Cause in their letter it did say stage.
In their first letter, they were referring to phase 3, but in this most recent revised submittal, they referred to it as phase 4 because they actually changed the phasing around.
Okay.
So it would be phase 4 now.
Okay. And then, do you know why the last 3 rezonings were not accepted by council?
From my understanding, it had to do with drainage concerns, from my understanding, but those happened prior to my tenure with the city. But from the research, it was related to drainage concerns.
Okay. Has drainage changed since then? Or has the ability to change or I mean, has anything changed since then in the?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. That's all I have for now.
Yes, any questions for staff? Darren? Okay, thank you again very much. Now, we'll move on to. Will you please raise your right hand? State your name and address, please. And do you swear to and affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Name and
My name is Amanda Webb. I'm here on behalf of Grand Communities. My address is 3940 Olympic Boulevard, Erlanger, Kentucky, and the zip code's 41018. Just bear with me 1 second to get situated here.
you're fine.
Alright, good evening. Thank you guys for taking the time tonight to hear us. Like I said, my name is Amanda Webb. I'm here on behalf of Grand Communities. Grand Communities is the affiliated development company for Fisher Homes. I'd have a semi-brief presentation I'd like to give to you guys tonight, kind of just to summarize and go over the Fisher Homes philosophy, what we've accomplished since the last time we were here, and to give you an overview of the current plan, and I think to answer and address some of the questions regarding drainage and potentially the school. So, as you guys know, I know you guys are very familiar with Fisher Homes. We strongly believe in developing high-quality homes at a high-quality location. We love Pataskala. Obviously, we just had Hare Manor approved. We have development that's been done in the past at Settlement at Pataskala. We really like this site specifically. I just want to emphasize the quality location that we have. Whenever we, I guess the philosophy is that we believe that it's important to take a thoughtful and caring approach to our development. So that doesn't just mean specifically the design of the development. That includes looking at some issues, some off-site stormwater issues that are going on out there at this site. We looked at that. We look at financial aspects, at open space, and really the long-term sustainability of the community. So yes, a lot of thought does go into that, and that is one of our core values when we design and bring site plans before you. So, starting out with the community context, as I noted, we really love this site. You can see some of the development that's already happened on the west side. We're really close to the middle school, to the primary school. We feel like this is a great location. It's close to employment opportunities for our future residents. We're close to retail, and we're not too far from City Hall either. So we really do like this site. This is the site. It's highlighted in yellow. We're looking west towards the Glenbrook subdivision, Summit Station. is on the top, and then east is the mobile home park. This is just a view looking at the Glenbrook subdivision. This would be directly across from what we're proposing as our front door. So it would be across from the entrance of our community. This is looking south. This is the intersection of Cleveland and Summit Road. It's, I believe, the Summit Station area. Looking past towards the school. This is east of our property, the Summit Ridge Estates Mobile Home Park. This property is adjacent to ours on the west side. So just to go into that, I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of the property, but most importantly, I want to kind of talk about where we've been and what we've done since we've been here. So as you remember, we were here in March. We met with you guys. We took in your concerns, your thoughts. We heard several things. We knew that you guys had concerns over what size sites Pataskala wanted. So we took all of those thoughts, we put them together. We actually analyzed the market. We looked at infrastructure costs, did quite a bit of different studies. We came up with the plan below here, the R10 zoning plan. So that was a plan that we thought, okay, yeah, that's something that we can do. That's a plan that we can work with. So we presented this plan to the Development Council in June of this year, or I'm sorry, July, in July. We met with them, we showed them the plan, we showed them the cluster plan that we had originally showed you guys first. We discussed that with both plans with the council. They reviewed the plans. They agreed that both plans have benefits to them, obviously. We received pros, cons to each. And when we left the Development Council meeting, what we realized is that we're kind of back at square one. We were really looking to identify and get a feel for what size site Pataskala wanted. But what that told us that we were back to where we started. So we're back at this plan. So why is this the best plan? Why we feel this is the best plan, and why we feel like it's the best plan for the city of Pataskala? That's something I'd like to go over with you guys. This is a cluster design which allows for 38 acres of open space. Over 70% of the sites on this plan are backing to open space. We have natural, active open spaces, we have passive open spaces, we're proposing a tot lot, so there are several amenities to this plan. One of the values of that is that homeowners, what we find is homeowners, they find more value in knowing that they don't back to another person. They back to open space. That land will not be developed. So we feel like that layout is a really good layout. Secondly, we talked about earlier drainage issues with the surrounding neighbors, with the Glenbrook Estates folks. We realized that there are drainage issues out here on site, and previously those plans, it's my understanding as well, they weren't approved due to drainage concerns. So what we've done is we've done some extensive studies on the stormwater system out there. I'll talk about it a little bit more later on in a little more detail, but we've actually oversized our ponds to account for the drainage on site and to help improve the surrounding neighbors' stormwater issues. And I will go over that a little bit later. So not only do those ponds along Summit Road serve as an aesthetic feature, by buffering the ponds between the pond and the home site, it pulls the homes back off Summit Road. So we're still maintaining that rural feel to Summit Road. So we're not putting those homes right up against Summit Road. Another thing, we are providing architectural diversity through the street layout, through our design, and I'll also go over that a little bit later in the plan. It's not just about colors or materials, it's about the style, the elevations of the homes. The one important thing that I probably can't emphasize enough, by doing the cluster design, it really reduces the amount of infrastructure required. I know it's the city's goal. There are issues in the city and everywhere with maintaining existing infrastructure. So when we do a cluster design, the smaller lots, they actually reduce the amount of infrastructure required. So it alleviates the long-term maintenance cost of the streets, the sanitary, all of your infrastructure. And I have some illustrations later on that I would like to share with you guys that will really illustrate that. The other thing that I want to talk about, this plan also allows us to not only purchase the area at the front, those 10 acres, but then to dedicate it and give that to the school. No cost involved with the school. We're buying the land. We don't have to, but we chose to buy the land, and we would like to dedicate that to the school. So that is something that we want to help contribute to the schools. So we feel like that's just a win-win, not only for the school district, but for the city also. Next, I'd like to kind of go through the comp plan. We reviewed this, we get it, some of your goals through the comp plan. I know you guys just are in the process of updating your comp plan. Promoting new housing. We're bringing in new houses for your city. Your city is growing at a great rate. That's something you guys should all be proud of, and we're trying to help with that growth. See here. Oh, and including the open space, of course, anticipated population growth and maintaining open space. So by this plan, it allows us to bring in open space. Parks and open space. You know, as I stated, there's over 34 acres of open space. We've preserved tree lines. We've tried to incorporate different types of open space throughout the community. This one's kind of key. Through clustering, this is where I go back to the clustering, we're actually reducing the urban sprawl because we're optimizing the use of this property to residential use. So it also helps reduce the sprawl. This is a pretty important slide. There's some goals and strategies. Improving the maintenance of existing roadways. If you look at our plans, you'll realize we are dedicating land. We are dedicating right-of-way, future right-of-way, to Summit Road. We are maintaining the infrastructure and the cost. So we're looking at this from a cluster sense, which allows for reduced infrastructure and long-term maintenance. It helps reduce those costs. I'd like to depict that. The off-site stormwater improvements. This is just another point of optimizing infrastructure. And it's also a good reason why this plan is so important. Our surrounding neighbors, they're all dealing with drainage issues. Glenbrook Estates, it isn't designed for the amount of stormwater that it's receiving off-site. So we're trying to solve that problem by oversizing our basins. So the drainage area that Glenbrook was designed for is so much larger. So if we can detain all of that stormwater on our site, you know, we are, and we're going above the city's requirements for that. So we believe that by catching that water on site, we will be eliminating the off-site issues and the issues that are coming downstream. We have put together a stormwater management plan. It's been reviewed by the city's engineer. Alan was involved with that, so we're working through that to help improve the off-site conditions and help alleviate those issues that our neighbors are dealing with. This slide is what I was explaining earlier. When we go with the cluster approach, really we could take, you have 300 feet of street. So if you have the 75-foot sites, which are the brown sites, those are each 75 feet wide. So you use 300 feet of street. If you reduce your lot width to 55 feet, you're only using 220 feet. So with the 75-foot sites, you have almost 30% more street more utilities that the city would be responsible for owning and maintaining. Do larger sites equal more value? Yes, sure they do, but what we find and what the studies have proven over and over is that a homeowner finds more value in less maintenance, it's a lifestyle choice, and having that open space in their backyard, knowing that they're not going to back to existing neighbors. So you're getting the same home on either site. Can we live with a 75 foot? Sure, but what we find is there's more value in less infrastructure, less maintenance cost. So what kind of homes are going to be on those 55 foot sites? I would like to show you. This is our community vision. This is just a few examples of some of the homes that we would be building here. The square footage ranges from 1,400 to almost 3,000 square feet on these homes. Some people might question, is it a smaller house because you have a smaller lot? No, we're meeting all of the building codes. Some homes are deeper. You get the same size home regardless of the site. I think one of the more important things with Fisher Homes, we have a great program where the buyer gets to kind of pick and choose what options they'd like to purchase, whether it be updating their kitchen, maybe it's adding a morning room, or adding a 4th bedroom and converting a loft to a 4th bedroom. That's something that's special about Fisher Homes. We have several different options. This is an example of a brochure that we do. This is just our basic brochure. You see on here, there's 4 different elevations for your house. If you get close enough, I know this is kind of hard to read on the screen, but you have your floor plans, and a lot of the things are options that you can upgrade. So to go to my next slide here, if you look on our website, and I'd encourage any of you to go view our website and just see all of the different types of things that you can upgrade and change and add to your home. Below there's about 5 different elevations, different versions of what the redwood could look like. It's not just different materials, it's different elevations, different architectural features. It allows for a very diverse streetscape, something that Fisher Homes is very proud of. If you look over here, I'm sorry, I can't point, but below those elevations, there's about 3 different floor plans. Those are just 3 different options for your bathroom alone. All of our homes come with several different options you can pick and choose. We have a design center that's conveniently located in Columbus area. You can go in there and you get to pick like your different floor types, your countertops, all sorts of different options. So I think that's a really cool thing about Fisher Homes, is just that lifestyle design. You get to put that money into your home and upgrade your home as you see fit. So, go over a few things. I just want to kind of touch on, our vision. Again, we're trying to do a modern garden theme. We're supporting local businesses, or we're bringing in home buyers to support those local businesses. About 74% of our homes are backing to open space. We're trying to solve stormwater concerns for the Glenbrook neighbors and also some of the neighbors that are south of our property. We have what we feel is the most efficient street layout, which minimizes utilities. It minimizes long-term maintenance costs for the city. We are dedicating right-of-way onto Summit Road. Just some of the, some more examples of some homes. I'm available for questions if you guys have any. We're really here looking for a recommendation to get your feedback on it.
It's ridiculous.
So I'd like to open up if anybody has any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll start with questions. We'll start down with Darren.
No question for you.
Dustin?
To some of the points in the briefing put on the staff report. I know you addressed the densities a little bit, but there were some other areas that seem to still
Okay,
need some information
sure.
involved. Give me a second to look here. Some of them, for example, like the eyebrows on the
Sure,
streets.
yeah,
I know you mentioned, you know, the reduced cluster will reduce the infrastructure for the city to
Mhm.
maintain. However, those eyebrows are very difficult for the city to maintain. So with that theme,
mhm.
is that something you guys are willing to?
It would definitely be something we would look into. We are proposing the eyebrows. It does give us a little bit more flexibility. It keeps us from doing those 90-degree turns. It's definitely something we would be open to evaluating and discussing with the city.
Same point to the sub street or the stub street on the north.
So I'll give you a little background on that substrate. As a past planner, good planning principles, good planning practices are to always connect to when you have large tracts of land, large vacant tracts of land for future development. It's really just a good planning principle for that. It gives more connectivity in the future if that site were to ever develop. It kind of opens it up for them to use our streets. It's something that we could look into eliminating if that's if that's the discretion of the board.
So all the traffic for these houses is going through somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, just in reviewing the staff report, it's not believed it's necessary. So, kind of look good on that one. The emergency access. So is it on phase 4 or phase 3?
I believe in our current plans.
It's phase 4.
It is in phase 4, yes. And I believe that was a discussion that was had between our engineer and working through that with the city.
With the cluster box units for no boxes.
Yes. That's something that we would definitely be willing to put together a plan and take it and review it with Alan, with Scott and Jack. I don't believe Alan would be involved in that, but what we tend to do is to integrate them within the streetscape so that they're not, sticking out like sore eyes. They're integrated within, so we would definitely work with staff on that.
Absolutely. We can see, I can envision a situation where in the right of way, close to the road, people pulling up opposite direction of traffic, grabbing their mail, things like that, which could
Sure.
be an issue.
Sure,
So-
and that's what we're trying to do, I believe we're doing it in Hare Manor, trying to space those evenly amongst the houses so it encourages walking, people walking to get their mail. I know people will still drive up. We also have to be cognizant of where the fire hydrants are, so that all comes into play with that. So I believe that's something that we would definitely want to sit down with staff and go over. Probably wouldn't be until maybe later in the process when we got towards construction drawings, but we would definitely work with staff on that.
The only other issue that I know others will probably bring up, and I can bet council will probably bring up too, is again, you did an excellent job explaining the reasoning on the cluster.
Thank you.
But with the comprehensive plan and what the future of R10 to be at the 2.17
Sure.
mark is what we're shooting for, at least here.
I agree, and that's something that we'd like to hear. We did look into doing the density bonus because I believe there's a provision in your code where you can seek a density bonus to cover off-site improvements. So of course we're working to improve off-site stormwater. We are dedicating right-of-way. We're also dedicating land to the school. All of those things coming into play. Of course, those are, need to be offset by something. So we're looking to offset those hopefully by a few additional homes. It's really just a handful of homes, but that would be what we're looking for as a provision in your code.
Zach, are there any reserves on the site or preserves, wetlands?
There are no wetlands on the site. We've had
Tree preserves?
we are looking to preserve the trees on the west property line. There's a significant amount of tree stands within this property, and really the cluster plan best preserves all of those trees. When we look at the other plan that I showed previously, that goes the R10 approach, we end up just going right through those trees. This plan is probably one of the best plans as far as preserving those trees. We've tried to preserve the straight line down there so that we can just kind of skirt around the edge of those trees. The same with that side of the east property line. We would be preserving those trees as well.
Would any of those tree preserves be on homeowners' property?
Yes, the east side, I think one of our initial plans we had on the HOA, or, you know, in its own area, but we put it on just because it's hard for the HOA to maintain land and then the homeowner, because the homeowner just automatically assumes that they own that land anyways. So what we do is it's during the platting process usually, when that's noted on the plat. And then if a tree were to come down, like, it would be, you could take a tree down if it were dead or diseased, of course.
Amanda, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Swear me in. Yeah. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So help you God?
My name is Jason Wisniewski. I am with Grand Communities as well, 3940 Olympic Boulevard, Erlanger, Kentucky, 41018. Typically how we handle things like this is, if we were to put a tree preservation easement as an HOA property, then there is the HOA, people in the HOA feel as if they can go back behind someone's house because it's HOA property. I'm part of the HOA, I have the right to go back there. So typically how we handle that is, it's an easement over the top of a feasible lot, right? You own the lot. However, if you encroach upon that tree preservation easement, i.e. cut down trees or do something, it is the HOA has the ability to force you, the homeowner, to correct said encroachment into there. So it's not, the easement's to the benefit of the HOA, however it's on private land. It's on private land because otherwise you're gonna get people saying, well, I can walk my dog back there and there's nothing you can do about it, and then we cause this kind of contention between homeowners, if that makes sense.
It does. The concern that I had, and I'm sure others would have, is trees preserved on a homeowner's lot. Sure, homeowner one, maybe even homeowner two is aware of this, but you get past that in homeownership or HOA falls apart, whatever the case may be, it happens, then that's gone now. And then people are cutting down, doing whatever they like. So a way to shore that up and to preserve those trees long run is something that should be considered, absolutely. Was there concern, if I remember last time in lunch, about utility easement or something in going through trees?
Yeah, I believe there's stormwater facilities on the back of those lots, which is in a tree preservation zone, which poses the question, how do you put in stormwater lines without affecting those trees?
That was a concern at the last meeting, and I know our engineer worked through that, and he's moved a lot of those easements to either the side yard or to the front. So that is something that we will be working through as it gets closer to construction plans and final engineering.
Is that indicated on anything yet?
No, it should be indicated in our plans. It was just a revision that we had made throughout the process. But there would definitely be something that would be evaluated. We had the same thing that came up during Heron Manor, and that was how we handled it, working through that at final engineering and construction.
Okay.
Thank you.
More of a comment than a question. So
Sure.
you were saying, with going with the cluster design, it's less expensive. You know, it's a little bit cheaper and it helps offset some of the different things that you're doing, like, I'm gonna harp on my 10 acres, because that's my thing.
Sure.
So you're giving this 10 acres to the school district, which is gonna fall on to the taxpayers eventually anyway. So it's kind of a gift that I don't really know that the people who live there really want. And as far as, the cluster type of environment, so all over Pataskala, we're zoned where people can do the cluster, and we keep fighting month after month with it.
Sure.
We finally got an area that's actually zoned the way we want things, and we're kind of looking now, you're bringing something in to change the zoning while we're trying to change everything else away from. So that's kind of the, you know, that's my thing, is we finally got someplace that's done right, and you wanna change it because it's cheaper. It costs less money for you guys if you, infrastructure, and yes, for the city too, but then it also offsets that 10 acres thing.
There's also plenty of benefits to the cluster plan as far as open space. You have homeowners that now back to open space, which is more desirable. Studies have shown that, you know.
That's depends on, the person wants to go someplace else. I sold real estate for years around here, nobody ever asked for anything close. I never had anybody that was interested in less than 5 acres in this town, so that's just my opinion. That's all.
Ann?
Well, obviously, you know, I kind of agree with what Robert said, but I appreciate the effort made for the drainage situation for the neighbors across the street. And I think it's a good solution, an attractive solution. Can you explain to me the reason we're moving away from mailboxes, traditional mailboxes?
Yeah, actually, it's the direction of the U.S. Postal Service.
It's the Postal
It's-
Service.
We're, yeah, they're
It's not
forcing
us.
us to do
It's
it.
the Postal Service.
Yeah, certainly
Okay.
not us.
Gotcha.
We would rather put in an individual, but the Postal Service requires cluster units now.
So for cluster units, it's required, but if it's not cluster units, it's not required.
No,
it's
I'm
required.
sorry,
Just
it's
all
cluster
town.
mailboxes.
Scott, you may wanna answer to that.
So,
Yeah, I agree with Amanda. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Postal Service now requires that any new subdivisions have the cluster mailboxes, which is multiple mailboxes. Essentially, imagine a post office box outside. So
Okay.
we've run into some issues in the past where some of these subdivisions are under construction, people are receiving mail at their house, and then the Postal Service says, absolutely not, figure out where you're gonna put the cluster box. So it's required by the Postal Service. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending upon how you decide on that issue.
Well, my son bought a brand new home in Dublin, and they have mailboxes, but they're taking the mailboxes away when they figure out where they're gonna put the cluster boxes.
Mhm.
So,
They make it there, whether we have homes on 90-foot wide sites or 100-foot wide sites, or we attached condominium products, cluster
Okay.
mailboxes.
The density doesn't. Original post.
okay,
No, it's
all
not.
right, thank you, because I'm obviously behind the times.
I think we all
On
are on
that.
that one.
Good, okay. And then, as far as the gravel paths, can you explain where those begin?
Sure.
Where they would end?
So, if I just walk up to the screen, it might be a little bit easier. So we are proposing paths from this point. It would wrap around this little tree line here and come out in between these home sites. There's also a tot lot that's proposed here. And then over here, we're proposing some paths to kind of lead into this open space and leaving this as more of a maintaining natural reserve where it's passive, just open space, we're allowing that tree line to remain. And those are the paths, and then we'll also have sidewalks throughout the community.
While you're there, can you show where the road is gonna come through the school to get onto Cleveland?
Sure. There's the access, the emergency access would start here and it would adjoin to the school property.
Adjoin or go through, cause you guys have to develop it all the way to Cleveland, right?
We will, I was gonna ask the same thing, so maybe we can wait for questions
please.
until we're finished, please, thank you. But go ahead and answer her question.
So the road would start here and then we go. The road will be developed in conjunction with the school property. We would be putting a temporary access in to get to Cleveland Road, an emergency access only.
Okay. I'm not a fan of gravel, anything.
Mhm.
It's messy and it grows weeds, and who maintains the weeds in the gravel? It's just, looks great when it's first put down, and then it's a disaster and kids are throwing gravel everywhere.
For the trails.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So, Plan B. You figure it out.
Okay. Understood.
The tot lot is very totty. It's very little. I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know if the picture is just a general, but it's very,
The picture is just a general
I
depiction,
hope it's
example of
nicer
it.
than that.
It will be nice, yes.
And then the turn lane.
Mhm.
So you're donating, there will be space available for a left turn lane in,
Yes.
heading south. and-
Yes, yes.
But you do not plan to that's not part of your,
No, we
would
will
that
be
be the city or
installing that.
you would be installing that?
We will be installing the turn
Okay.
lane, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Mhm.
so, I do have concerns about the school lot donation and the responsibility of the taxpayers down the road and how that's handled. I don't know that we have a right to allow that. I just really, I think it's an excellent question that we should find out and just kind of make sure that that has been, the proper steps have been taken and he's not, the superintendent isn't taking it upon himself to approve something that
That's what's pissing
may
me
not
off.
be permitted. Maybe Connie knows
Yeah.
that, all that.
Connie, would you like to step up?
Sure, Ms. Kleemeister.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
I do. Connie Klima, P.O. Box 991, Pataska, Ohio. First of all, your PUD code itself talks about the ability of us and you to grant or recommend approval for donation of property to a school, to the city, whoever, and they actually state the school. And if I may say this, you know, this idea of donating to the school was something that the school came up with, not us. And to your point, you're saying that, I mean, I sat there and I thought, how, it's an interesting discussion to say, okay, you know, what are you getting for this gift? Well, we haven't gotten anything. We've actually gotten more people upset about the school getting 10 acres because of taxes, I understand you're saying, and other things. So, you know what, the school, we don't wanna give the school the money, the acreage, we don't. I don't want this discussion of our development to be based on the school, because the school lot could be something we could keep and give to somebody else, or keep and use it as a green lot. The idea was actually, it was a request by the school, and this company, my client, thought it was a wonderful idea. If they wanted, you know, were willing to do it, and they were willing. But to use that to say, you know, we're getting something, we haven't. We've gotten more criticism from this than anything. So, in fact, we can take the school out of this, forget it as part of our development, and we don't even have an open space issue now because we have 10 acres less and we have 36%, and we don't even have to have that diversion. But we were willing to risk that diversion because we were willing to give the acreage to the school. So keep that in mind. Take out that, we lose one of our diversions and maybe another one too, so.
So I thought the school's probably gonna need land eventually, and they're not gonna have to buy it.
For what?
What?
That ain't
If
gonna do
it's-
squat.
yeah, if
What?
it's
That piece of
allowed, then
property's
it's
not gonna
allowed.
do squat.
No, these
Yeah.
extra kids.
So it is
are
allowed.
going.
So it is allowed,
It is
that
allowed,
answers my
yes.
question. Yeah, and, as far, I still have a problem with the density and using the cluster development as, I mean, we're really not preserving a whole lot there. I mean, the purpose of cluster is to preserve, we're preserving some trees, it's not really that, it's not like it's
Can you put it
some
back
kind
up?
of
I
beautiful
want you to see
area
the
that we're
comparison.
preserving, it's trees that can be reinstalled somewhere else.
I'd like you to look at it, I wish we had it so that you could see it better, because this is too small. But I want you to look at the comparisons, there you go. Is there a way that we can enlarge, Jack, that?
Unfortunately not on PowerPoint.
Okay. If you look at a standard R10 type development, which is the lower, there you have actually fewer lots and no real open space. Lots back up to each other, and basically there's no open space. Now you can say this property's not that pretty, so why do you want to preserve anything? But there's a large tree area at the north, and if you look at the top and you look at the bottom, I suggest that I would probably wanna live in a lot that, and I do at my home, where I have green space in the back. So whether it's a beautiful rolling hill or green space, there's something to be said for that. And you guys know, I've been before you numerous times now with this cluster, and the word is becoming a bad word. But and you say that we're basically trying to avoid that. But actually, let me say something. There's a lot of people that live in small lots around this development that don't have the privilege of having green space. The property right here in below or south of our property on Summit Road, those lots are 50 foot wide. Ours start at minimum 52 and grow. They don't have green space, they're all on their own lots. Those were developed years ago, I think 60s, maybe 50s. Cluster wasn't a reason to have open space, it was a reason to have smaller lots and people lived on them. I've looked at those houses today, in fact, I just learned that a couple people here tonight live there. They're nice lots, they're pretty. They're on 50 foot wide lots. The houses are nice. So, I wanna I think some of the opinions about cluster is it's a bad thing. It's not all about money, no, but money takes a development like this to work, because if we're putting in a large sanitary sewer that accommodates problems that have existed for years, and it's starting to clear up some of those issues, if we put in turn lanes, if we do donate land to the school, if that becomes something that is promoted through this development, if we do those types of things, and we maintain with this one, we have almost 27 acres of open space. That's a lot. When you look at a development that, take out the school, is 70 some acres.
What is the price point?
The price point, I think you can speak on it.
The price point is high 200s to low to mid
I'm gonna
3s.
double lot.
I knew you were, but so much further side.
That's all I have.
I know, okay.
Between.
Thank you, Ann. I have again, with the open space, we are still shy, even, right now with the new plan, right? It's still shy of the 35%.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's still, and we do seem to have a lot of modifications and diversions, with this one here. That still are kind of unanswered, so, I still think those are some things between Alan's comments and, about the eyebrow and everything. I think there's a lot still to continue to take a look at. Please.
Just a clarification for Mr. Begarone and Ms. Rogers. When we're talking about the density being an issue, are you talking about the overall number of home sites, or are you talking about the width of the home sites, or are you talking about both of those elements?
Mine is more of the distance between the houses. I think that it's just, they're supposed to be 16 foot?
Correct.
And I just think that's a much better option than having them. 'Cause what are you proposing right now?
10 foot.
So,
I would agree.
Okay. All right, I just wanted clarification in my own head. Thank you.
Thank you. Even with the fire access in that one property, regardless of what plan it is, there still needs to be kind of a designation, correct?
That's correct.
That's still not been done yet on any plans yet?
That's
Just
correct.
designated it's gonna be here, but there's no true idea yet of what or where or how.
We know where, but it will just need to be reflected on the plans and identified in the text, and essentially address that this is what is going to happen.
Okay. Okay, and then also we haven't quite seen yet what you wanna do with those walking paths and that, right? What you're putting down or anything like that yet, or?
We're proposing to put in the gravel walking paths. However, if that's a condition of our approval, if they have to be 4-foot asphalt, we would be open to the discretion of the board.
Okay. Other than that, I have no other questions right now. Anybody have any other questions yet? Okay.
I did have a question,
Go
actually,
ahead.
another question about, now, the last time we talked about the intersection at Broad, right?
Summit and Broad?
Summit and Broad, and the impact on that, there was not a traffic study wasn't required, right?
There was a traffic study required, but they did not look at the impact the development would have on that particular intersection.
They need to.
So, do we know what the impact would be?
We do not know because it was not part of the traffic impact study. Typically, a traffic impact study will go to the nearest major intersection.
Okay, that's what it was. I knew there was something, but that intersection is a disaster already.
Yep.
And I'm really concerned about that as well, but I don't know that that is something that is I don't know, I mean, what do we do about it? What can be done about that?
Through this development, I don't believe anything can be done with it as the city does not have impact fees.
And it would just be another, I mean, I guess my question is that something that we should consider, or are we even allowed to consider it?
Typically, from a legal perspective, you can't, as long as they are addressing traffic into and out of their subdivision, you can't look at traffic being generated aside from that. So if they address the left turn lane based upon traffic and legal precedent, they don't have to worry about other intersections unless there's impact fees, etc.
Okay. Can we make an impact fee as a condition based on future impact fees that will how can we get us some of that impact fee?
Unfortunately, without having city impact fees on the books, we cannot impose an impact fee without that.
Okay. Okay. Well, that stinks.
Go ahead.
All right,
Dustin.
that's all I have.
What is the length of the cul-de-sac issue from the 830 and 500?
The city code requires a maximum of 500 feet. So typically they need the divergence if they go over that 500 feet in cul-de-sac lane.
I guess just to fully understand the why on the 500, are you aware?
I'm not aware. I don't know if this was crafted in conjunction with the fire district or not, but that's just what we have on the books. I don't know why.
Okay. And also based on 125510, it's 35% required space, right?
Open space?
Yes.
That's correct.
At the 2.17 density, correct?
Any planned development district has to have a minimum of 35% open space.
Okay, so even with the cluster design, we're still not there. That's all I have.
Okay. With that, we do have 4 speakers. We have Judy Bowen, Donald Schaefer, Jerika Zuckerman, and Susan Holmes. If you 4 would like to stand up, I'll swear you all in at once. Just be aware that if you spoke before, all that is still on record. If you've heard something that somebody else, please, feel free to affirm what you feel, but let's try to keep it to, a minimum on the time. I think we're 4. Do we want a minimum? Just want to let them go ahead and speak?
You just put a timer on what's
No, what's that? 5?
I would say 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Everybody fine with 5? Okay. Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. When you come up, please just state your name and address. And we'll start with Jody.
Good evening, and thank you for letting us speak. I live on Cleveland. My concerns is...
Your full name, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jody Bowen.
Thank
Thank you, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
My concern is the density and the side yards as well. Cleveland between Summit and, Taylor Road is a school pass-through. Zoom, zoom, zoom. You can hear the cars start to rumble as soon as the school starts. It's quiet in the summer. So, I have concerns about that. I'm not sure, she said there was no, Ms. Rogers said there's no impact study, but there is gonna be an impact as far as the schools are concerned in that area. Try to make a left turn onto Summit Road, off of Cleveland, or a left turn onto Taylor Road, during a school time, you'll sit there for a long period of time. So there is concern about that traffic. Number 2 is the 10 acres. In their presentation, they talked about green space and wanting to have that passive green space. Additionally, at the last meeting, I believe the superintendent said, well, we couldn't make a park or whatever out of the 10 acres, but maybe we'll do a bus terminal. I don't think that is in line with passive green space to build a bus terminal on the back of their housing development either. The next item I'm concerned about is the emergency access road. Is it determined who pays for that? I know it's done by a phase, but who pays for that down the road? And what kind of road, I know it's an emergency access road, and if I lived there, I would want more than one place in for emergency, but who pays for that?
The developer's responsible for paying for that.
During that phase of the, when that phase is complete, is that what
That's
you're saying,
correct.
sir?
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. So, anyway, I don't know why that couldn't remain a passive green space or trees, wood lots, not favorable of the bus terminal. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next is Donald Schaefer. Please state your name and address, full name and address, please.
Donald Schaefer, I live at Broad and Lincoln. Back to what she was saying about the emergency layout there at the 10 acres there. It's not gonna get used for emergency, people are just gonna use it, period. I mean, you put a pathway in there to get in and out, people are gonna go in and out. The other thing is the infrastructure in the schools. Once the schools, the superintendent's been so quiet on this whole situation, he's like, I'm gonna keep mum on this. And us as citizens that gotta pay the taxes, we're stuck holding the bag. Has anybody heard from AEP, how they plan on, because right now AEP's ability to provide power to that area is marginal at best. The roadways, the structure of the roads themselves are not gonna hold up, especially in Cleveland. Cleveland is probably one of the poorest roadways in the whole city of Petoskey. And we don't need construction vehicles going in and out, and I'm hoping that they're using what's gonna be with Sage Point Avenue, as the sole input into this facility. I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Don. Jerika Zuckerman, please state your full name and full address, please.
Jerika Zuckerman, 6368 Summit Road, Southwest. So Robert had mentioned, I was looking at the comprehensive plan. We keep trying to go towards a lower density, certain, in Summit Station, the specific term was used, conservation suburban. It was supposed to be 1 unit to about 2 acres, give or take, there might be some variances with 50% minimum open space. So the question is, like you said, why are we going backwards? Why are we going from low density residential to trying to cluster these homes in? I'm all for development. We're developing, the city's growing, it's inevitable, but there's certain places that clusters fits, and there's certain places that I moved to Pataskala because I wanted the green open space. I don't even have 2 acres, and I kick myself for that, but thankfully my neighbors have 5, and it wraps around me, and we got a wooded area. It's beautiful. But they keep talking about this wooded area that's 74% of homes open to open space, but most of that isn't theirs, and it's farmland, and it's gonna be developed. So it's not really open space. I mean, there's minimal homes here that really have open space. You know, going back to the whole city using that plot, essentially that's not necessarily, gonna be, you know, whether or not you guys give them the subdivision, but talking about a bus terminal on Cleveland, I mean, I second that the roads can't handle that. You have to widen those roads. Those buses can barely turn onto Cleveland. I mean, they wide turn the entire Summit Road just to get on those things. So what can the school use 10 acres for that isn't, you know, just administrative buildings or something that isn't gonna generate a whole bunch more traffic that, I mean, they can't build a school on there. To me, I don't know the purpose of giving off that 10 acres. If they wanna just stretch those houses, make them a little less dense, make them a little more desirable. You know, personally, I moved to Pataskala to not have that density cluster housing. I moved here to have higher property values with bigger lots, and, you know, my next goal is to own a minimum of 10 acres. I was hoping in Pataskala, but it's seemingly getting more impossible. Those would be my main concerns. You know, I would say instead of gifting 10 acres, they're supposed to do something to get the variances. Why not actually build the turn lanes? Why not actually create homes with bigger lots, utilize that 10 acres, make more green open space, a bigger park, you know, more desirable place to live, and actually help with the city infrastructure if that's where you're asking for them to do something to give a variance. Let that variance be, help us get the traffic off of Summit, help us, you know, improve Cleveland, or you know, the road, the emergency entrance being actually paved so that, you know, we have an actual emergency entrance. I think that there's other places they could be putting their good faith that isn't an empty plot that taxpayers are gonna have to have another levy to build something on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Last is Susan Holmes. Again, please state your full name and address, please.
Okay. Susan Holmes, I'm at 6334 Summit Road, Aspen 43062. I totally agree with everything Jerica said. Going back to the school, some of you might have remembered the refugee road plan. It was interesting because it was in the newspaper that school growth, some of the things that Dr. Wagner said, this density concerns me. He was concerned with more projects like this. I find it interesting that now he's on the fence, not really concerned about this because there's a carrot of 10 acres. I know they don't like that, but that's what it is. I think we've got an issue with the amount of density. I agree with Jerica, make your plan better, less density. You're talking about 400 more cars are gonna be on the road. Roads can't even handle it now. And then what control does Pataskala have over the 10 acres that's donated to the school? The school could turn around and sell it. They don't have to develop it. They could turn it into more housing or sell it to somebody else. So I think there's all kinds of concerns with the road right away, what the school's gonna do. We know they don't really like to do abide by zoning. They kind of go on their own tangent. As far as stormwater goes, you're taking that water and putting it behind us into a system that wasn't designed to take on that amount of water. That site is basically gonna be paved over, and all that water that's coming, that's gonna go behind us in retention ponds, that wasn't designed to take on their development. I just think that's poor, because that site has historically been underwater. As far as your ability to allow or disallow and the traffic, it's your job to do our health, safety, welfare, and zoning. That's what it's all about. Urban, under your preliminary plan development directives, there are several things where, you know, under I, proposed development will not create overcrowding and or traffic hazard on existing roads or in intersections. how is that not your concern? That is our concern. Does this, under N, does it retain the rural character of the task? I can't hear. 2.6 units per acre, I don't think so. P, under stormwater, adequate drainage. They're calculating it with a 1-year storm. What about a 100-year flood? That's what we have around here. Q, proposed phasing applied but not defined. So where you have all those stubs, what is going to happen on the other side of those? That's gonna just be more development of the same density. So how much more can we handle? It just is frustrating that we've worked on comprehensive planning, paid people to come up with it, but we're not even gonna consider it. I have a question about also who maintains, I've heard something about the HOA. So is the HOA maintaining the ponds, the nuisance geese, cutting, doing the trees, all the maintenance? Are they doing that, or is that the city?
Should be the HOA.
That's correct. The HOA is responsible.
And then with, I don't know how you get ambulances into a stubbed road. I understand an eyebrow saves on pavement, but how do you plow it? How do you turn vehicles around? And when your houses are so close together, one starts on fire, it's gonna catch the next one on fire. So those are all health, safety, welfare. Those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we kinda need to go to a little discussion. My biggest fear is there's a whole lot of modifications. I think some things could possibly be cleaned up, make it easier for us as a level take a look at this.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. There's a whole lot of questions
Whole lot of
unanswered.
questions and a little bit more plans, more details on the plans to help staff and ourselves make, be able to see more of it, be more comfortable.
I would like to see, the one, comment made by Mr. Schaefer about the use of the emergency, drive by residents is a valid point. I'd like to see how that would be fed through the parking lot. I guess we're assuming it's going somewhere. I don't see a drawing anywhere
Does
of
it-
this.
Yeah, does it have to be a road, or is it similar to what's at that, senior living
And
facility?
it has to be on that
310?
property, is that correct, or,
That's correct. Typically what would happen is there's, for lack of a better term, grass pavers, and it's a
Right.
crosshatch concrete, essentially a path. The grass grows up through it, and then the fire district will barricade it, and essentially it just looks like grass, but the fire district knows it's there. So if the entrance at Sage Point Avenue is for whatever reason blocked and they can't access the subdivision, that's when they'll use that emergency access, and they know the location, and they'll work with the applicant when it's being installed to make sure it's installed to their standards. Once, for example, if that 10 acres were to develop as whatever it may be, then the school then would be responsible for installing the road, and the emergency access would go away, and then the access to the 10 acres would come from that new road and also provide a secondary entrance to the subdivision.
I think I've seen one of those, that they have that at the, right down the road from you on 310. When they did the construction, they used that emergency road for traffic to be going in.
They're really unsightly though, but I don't think it would be seen so much.
You
where
don't, you
it's
really don't see
located.
it when it grows up, but they are
Yeah.
unsightly when they're being used. Yeah.
So phase 4, I'm assuming we would have more density, so that's why it would require the emergency access at that point,
Back there.
because there will be more people.
Actually, the fire district requires at minimum 2 access points,
Two
one
access
of which
Well, I
is-
know, but
one of which is emergency. So this could be a 10-house subdivision, they would still
Would have to
require
be-
that. So it's not based upon density, it's, their mandate is 2 access points, at least 1 is emergency. And based upon the phasing plan, that's when they would get down, phase 4 would get down to where the emergency access would be installed.
But it'd be kinda nice
Okay.
to see a plan, at least to see where it's going to be.
Well, we don't have 2 accesses at the one on Broad Street. We put a light in for them.
That was between the developer, the then public service director, and the fire
And the
district to
fire.
come up with that, cause they attempted to try and get emergency access easements, however, they were unable to obtain those from the adjacent property owner, so
That's right.
the,
So the fire has
That's
the
right.
compromise with them was to install the traffic signal.
That's right, I remember that now. Which is not ideal to have the light there. All right, that's all.
So I guess the question is, I mean, if, what's your feeling if we tabled something like this? We probably should give some detail as to what we're looking for,
Mhm.
for them to be able to come back.
Is there anything additional that we're asking for now that we didn't ask for last time? I mean, there was a lot of questions, there was a ton of questions before, and I don't think that every question was answered. So they came back to us without answering some of the questions that we had. Is that a fair statement? Or do you have new questions that
I
have?
think that's fair. I think that's fair.
So, you know, I mean, they came back to us with this, they didn't answer the questions. You know, do we just keep delaying this and tabling it on and on and on? Or do we make our decision and see where it goes on the next?
What's the only thing holding back, Nancy? Isn't it we can do it anyway?
That's the only thing you can do, right. Well, there's quite a few still, there's not a lot on the plan. Connie,
Design issues.
if we want to hear from Connie real quick?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think you've delineated some of your questions quite well. We'll have the minutes from the meeting. We're fine with it being tabled. And in regard to addressing things, we did address a lot. I think the staff report does not go through and tell you all the things that are addressed. That would take too long. They basically talk about things that they believe are still out there. And some of those things, we think are addressed, and maybe we need more details on the plans, but we definitely went through that list. Our goal is not to keep coming back here and to drive you crazy or to waste your time and not to waste ours. So our goal is to get this either approved or disapproved and on. So we would request that we be tabled, given a chance to come back and address. And at that time, you can decide how you want to proceed with this project. Also, I want to point out too, just because it's been brought up, that both the Broad Street and that's why we also have a boulevard on Summit and not just a straight-in road.
Okay,
Okay?
okay,
So it almost serves as 2 access points.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If,
The one thing that I would like for them to address, since it's being tabled, the density, besides what's already been mentioned,
pretty much all the modifications.
all the modifications, the density, I know,
I think post office, I agree.
The-
Post office is one, the mailboxes
yeah,
are, they're, it's, while it's
has
new,
to be,
it's
yeah.
new and it's unfortunate for everybody. I think it's something that would nice to see. I
Sure,
know
they
that
would
was
be
brought up
located.
about walking, and walking is great this time of year, but in the wintertime, let's face it, everybody's gonna drive to that mailbox. So there'll have to be some spaces, or you're gonna get a
Right.
backing up. So maybe a
Like
little
to
better
see
plan
that.
on the,
Mhm.
and it's, again, this is all new for us too on the mailboxes, so.
As far as the sign goes, did anyone have any comments on that? Any problem with that?
It's still it's in the modifications, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So those are all things that,
And then,
How many signs are we talking? Is it just one sign or 2? Because you said one sign was under the limit but didn't need the diversion, which led me to believe there's 2 signs. Is there 2 signs or just 1?
there's,
It's one sign that has 2 faces, so when you count the second face, you,
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
double-sided sign, that's what gets you over
Okay.
the.
Right.
so those are, again, those are all things that can be addressed.
I'd like to see paved path, no gravel. I'd like to see a better rendition of the tot lot. something more accurate to what they would like to be putting in there. I'd like to see a better description of the emergency access. I'd just like to see more of a drawing on that.
More of a plan on that.
More of a plan. Yeah. For me.
We've approved hanging signs before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah,
thought their sign,
I think that.
That's,
the
yeah,
rendition
that's,
looked
yeah, that's,
pretty, as long as it's level. Hanging level, because there's one that I'm still looking
depends
at
on which
that's
way you
not
turn your
level,
head.
right? Just tilt your head, Ann, and it's level.
anything else then that we think, I mean, does that pretty much cover what we're?
Maybe some better language on tree replacement and the preservation zones.
Okay. If we table this, do we need all that list, or is it all pretty much on record?
We've taken notes, it's on record, and a lot of it with the modifications was to address the various
Sure.
departments and agencies' comments, so we have all that, in writing.
I have one more question, or at least comment. When we're talking about the preservation zone easement or putting it in an HOA, I wanna make this comment, cause I've been involved in many developments. And what was explained to, I think needs to be, explained even more. Whether this property is in an HOA or not, what I understand is being said is, don't put these trees that are in the preservation zone on lot, because people are likely to go, I don't know it's in a preservation zone, I'm gonna tear it down. Well, guess what? Even when somebody is adjacent to HOA land, that doesn't go anywhere except back to a fence at somebody else's property, they still use it as their own property, and they still cut them down. So the point is that an easement serves just as well as putting it in a separate HOA. If the HOA has power over it, which this easement provides, HOA has power to take care of those things, whether it's on their lot or not on their lot. So that's the difference. It is true, I done subdivisions where all of a sudden we have this green band around and it's the HOAs, and the next thing you know, there's kids building tree houses back there and somebody's going crazy because it looked, they're in my backyard. Well, they're not, but they're allowed to be there. They're making paths, they're bringing their dogs through every night, they're looking in your backyard. Actually, having a preservation zone does not allow anybody in the subdivision to come in your backyard, but it gives the guidance that says the HOA has the power to tell you can't cut down those trees, or you have to do what you have to do. That's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you. With that being said, I mean, are we ready to make a motion? Anybody wanna?
Guess we move to table. Is that what we're gonna do?
I think so.
I'm just trying to look for the verbiage.
Go right to the top and just table rezone application.
A motion that we, table application ZON 19003, pending, the modifications being addressed. That are listed in the staff.
Second.
Second? Okay. Any discussions on that? Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Bagarelle,
No.
Ms. Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Emerson,
Yes.
Mr. Ripley, Mr. Truax,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan.
Yes.
Okay, that being said, tabled. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We'll take a little time out, and then, we'll move into our other business. All right, moving on to new business. Do we have any new business? It pretty much says none, but just in case.
That's correct, no new business.
No new business, okay. Moving on to 6 other with Ann, parking and grass and inappropriate vehicles, but, do you have something you wanna add to this, Scott?
I do. There has been discussion on the council level of enacting kind of a basic property maintenance code. They're still considering that, so I know with our thoughts on this, we were gonna slowly move it up to see the temperature as we started to add some of these regulations. But from what I imagine, some of this will be encapsulated in a potential property maintenance code. So instead of making two separate things, let's hold off and see what council's direction is, and if they say yes, planning and zoning, move forward with this, we would add these items into the property maintenance code. So that way we don't have to make one and make this one and then work to combine them, but maybe just do it all at once, is my thought.
Okay. Does that sound good to you, Ann, with them?
I mean, what else are you gonna do?
Exactly.
I think that we should be the ones working on the property maintenance code, personally. I don't know why we have this additional thing. It's just, so I will be calling, I did actually put in a call to one of the city councilmen. He was going on vacation, and then I was going on vacation. But not that it'll change anything, but I do have a concern about that and how it's handled in the future, things that pertain to planning and zoning. I think that's why we're here.
Hmm.
So, and they pay us the big bucks. There's that.
So-
Anyway, so that, I guess, yeah, we can just,
Move on from that
Move
one
on.
for right
Well, I think what we can do is just kind of leave it off to the side now, because if the property maintenance code is determined that we're not moving forward with this, we could still bring this kind of back off the side and say, here's what planning and zoning commission is interested in, and maybe try it at that point.
okay.
Moving on to 7, excuse for absence. I do have a question on A, since we're all gonna have to abstain, can we even,
Who's gonna vote?
can we bring that, does that have to be tabled to it or moved to the next meeting?
Well, I think, I don't know. My
I
thought
just
would
saw
be-
that, and I'm reading those names, I'm
I
like.
would think, even if we do it all at once, you know, if Darren was absent, everybody, the other 4 votes would say, you know, that counts for Darren, and so on and so forth. So I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
I can't imagine, I don't think there's gonna be huge legal repercussions if we roll
If
the
we,
dice
okay,
on this
so
one.
should I do it all at once, or just, okay?
I think we could do that.
Okay, so we'll start with this, excuse for absence from August 7th, 2018 regular meeting for Jerry Truex.
I think you just do the whole,
Jerry
Whole
Truex,
list.
Dustin Epperson, Darren McGowan, Randall Ripley, Ann Rogers, and Robert Begaro. Do I have to put that in a motion, or put a motion for us to be excused? I'll put a motion out.
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Mr. Truex,
Yes.
Ms. Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Epperson,
Yes.
Mr. Begaro,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan.
Yes.
Okay. That passes. Moving on to B, from August 8th, 2019, special meeting for Robert Begaro. I'll put a motion for the excuse.
Second.
Roll.
Ms. Rogers,
Yes.
Mr. Begaro,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Truex,
Yes.
Mr. Epperson.
Yes.
Okay. That being excused. Now number C, from the August 22nd, 2019 special meeting for Ann Rogers and Robert Begaro. Again, I'll put a motion out for the
just a second, I think it should be Ann Rogers and Randall Ripley.
and Randall Ripley.
Ms. Begaro was at the meeting.
Okay,
Just typo.
so typo. Sorry. And Randall Ripley. Again, I will put a motion out for those two.
Second.
Roll.
Ms. Rogers, abstain. Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. Epperson,
Yes.
Mr. Begaro,
Yes.
Mr. Truex.
Yes. And moving on to number 8 for the list of minutes, approvals for minutes to the meetings. A, can I do all 3, or do I have to do one at a time?
How do we have minutes for meeting we didn't have?
Because we still have to, for the one we didn't have, we still have to open it, do roll, say, only one person's here, close the meeting, yeah.
Close the meeting. Can I do all three at once, or do I have to go one at a time?
I think we should probably do one at a time to be safe.
Okay. So approval for minutes for August 7th, 2019, regular minutes meetings. Everybody have a chance to read those? Okay. I'll put a motion for the approval of the minutes of August 17th, 2019, regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Roll?
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarrow?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Truex?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Moving on to B, August 8th, 2019, special meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read those? Any discussions or changes? Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and put a motion out again for the August 8th, 2018 special meeting approval.
Second.
I think Robert got that. Roll?
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarrow?
Yes.
Mr. Truex?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
And finally, on the approval minutes, C, August 22nd, 2019 special meeting minutes. Again, has anybody had a chance to look at that? Any discussions or changes? Nothing on that. I'll move again that we approve the minutes for August 22nd, 2019 special meeting minutes. Second by Dustin. Roll?
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Truex?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarrow?
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else, or we're at the mighty number 9?
Move to adjourn?
And?
Second.
Second by Darren. Any discussions? Roll.
Mr. Epperson?
Yes.
Mr. Bagarrow?
Yes.
Mr. Truex?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Rogers?
Yes.
Okay.